The Eastern African Association, in collaboration with the Kenya High Commission London and the Commonwealth Secretariat and DMA Invest, hosted their inaugural annual lecture 3 days ago, focusing on how to leverage digital and trade finance to accelerate the new intra-Africa trade, or the AFCFTA. The key lecture was delivered by Dr. James Mwangi, the iconic Group Managing Director of Equity Holding Group of Kenya. There were other major speakers as well, including the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Agnes Gitau is the Executive Director in charge of the UK and Europe at the Eastern Africa Association. She was part of the London conference, and she joins me now via WebEx to discuss this inaugural lecture. Good evening to you, Agnes. Thanks for making it on the show tonight.
A pleasure, boss.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Give me highlights of this this London conference 3 days ago on the AFCFTA. Talk to me about it.
It was hosted on the margins of the Commonwealth Trade Ministers meeting, which takes place every so often. And the purpose of the lecture was to really stress the importance of trade finance in accelerating the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Our keynote lecture was Dr. Mwangi, the Group Managing Director of the Equity Group, who spoke about the bank's initiative to bridge the trade finance gap. And he highlighted some of the areas they covered. They really tried to intervene for the SMEs. We know that SMEs make up over 80% of Africa's workforce. They employ a majority of our citizens, and therefore a key driver to Africa's economy. And accessing trade finance as well as digital infrastructure for finance is important for them to make ends meet. So the focus was, if Africa Free Trade Agreement is going to succeed, it's important for both the supply and demand side to work together to address the barriers of access to trade finance.
Well, how do these issues in trade and finance relate to the East African region or corridor? Of course, you're a Kenyan, by the way, so I'm sure as the Executive Director for UK and EU, as far as the Eastern Africa Association, I'm sure you've got your hands on the issues around for East African community.
So the Eastern African Association is a membership organization with over 300 businesses that operate across the Eastern African region. So therefore, an integrated region is very important for the association. And so this theme around how to make trade easy across the borders is important for the association and our members, right? And as you're aware, East Africa is one of the regional economic blocks that is fairly integrated. I think intra-East Africa trade is fairly higher than the intra-Africa trade, which is about 12 to 14%. In terms of how the regional integration is working, Kenya, Tanzania, and a few other countries are part of the countries that are part of the guided trade initiative by the Africa Free Trade Agreement, who are already participating in the Africa trade under the AFCFTA. So we've seen really leadership by Kenya, Rwanda under President Kagame to try and drive the intra-Africa trade, because we know it is important for our businesses and therefore important for our economy.
Interesting. If you look back, how much progress do you think the AFCFTA has really been making so far, or what are you learning on the ground?
So it's steps, Boston, baby steps, but there is some progress. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any data to try and track how the progress. However, initiatives like the guided trade initiative, there's been movement in some of the protocols. Protocol on goods and services, protocol on women and youth. So there's been some movement in regards to addressing key issues. And I think maybe in the next sort of 2 to 3 years, when they start tracking trade that is registered under this agreement, we might start seeing some results. But also, governments are speaking to each other, private sector, they're speaking to each other and finding ways of how they can trade with each other.
Interesting when you see global economic forecasts by the World Bank, the OECD, the IMF. They don't really look encouraging, I'm sure you know. So you see those numbers and those reports on a daily basis, I'm sure, Agnes. But do you think the intra-Africa trade deal could be negatively impacted by the rest of these turbulence, vulnerabilities that we're seeing around developing markets and economies around the world, high interest rates, inflation, geopolitics, Russia, China, Taiwan, Ukraine?
Absolutely. These will have an impact in the development under the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Credit access is one of the areas that the World Bank and OECD report have highlighted as one of the challenges that is impacting global growth, right? So any initiative that promotes the intra-Africa trade will be important. But as you say, all the geopolitics, all the external factors around us has an impact on the continent, because what happens is investors will hold back, right? Waiting for the situation to be a little bit calmer in their home countries before they can participate in any international trade. So global trade, of course, has declined, but this question for me is an opportunity for key players who see the value of an integrated continent to try and work together to drive supply chains, to drive value in the Africa supply chain, so that we don't continue to be dependent on the international supply chains. And also, when they are global shocks, if we are independent of the international space, we are able to address these issues.
Oh, okay. So on a final note, Agnes, you moderated a panel on trade finance. What are the key takeaways? What did you hear in the room as far as investors, businesses, finance and professionals, those who are in the advisory business, such as yourself at GBS Africa, brought to the table in terms of whether Africa is still that investment destination, whether they want to do more business with the African continent, despite the turbulence, globally speaking, I mean?
So one of the key takeaway was access to credit, so therefore access to trade finance is important. Another takeaway which Dr. Mwangi in his lecture highlighted was SMEs, despite the fact that they're the key players in Africa's economy, face double exclusion when it comes to finance. They are excluded from formal banking, but they are also excluded from digital banking. And also another highlight from the lecture was there is a business case in investing in SMEs across the African continent. So the gap, the trade finance gap, which is estimated to be about $400 billion, is a great opportunity for the suppliers of trade finance. So challenges, but these challenges present a great opportunity for the supply side to try and support or intervene in making sure that finance for business is available not only to big businesses, but also for SMEs. But in general, the conversation is that there is the importance of working together. There is the need for pooling resources. So the financial services, the DFIs perhaps, so they can de-risk the commercial banks, the importance of policy that facilitates banks to lend to SMEs, right? So there is a call to action by everybody coming together to make sure that SMEs are facilitated and they're able to operate in a conducive environment.
All right, it's a Friday night, which I appreciate your contributions to the show tonight, as always. Agnes Gitau, Executive Director in charge of UK and Europe at the Eastern Africa Association. Thank you, Managing Partner also at GBS Africa. Have a great weekend.